Hey, look at that. We got it. How's it going there, friends? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it might be where you are out there. Welcome back to the live stream. This is C Sharp with CSharpFritz. How you doing out there, chat room? It is so good to see you. Look at this. Oh my goodness, so many friends here already. My goodness. We have a full day. Look at the chat room. Look at the chat room. I'm going to have to scroll up. There's so many folks here. Excuse me. Oh my goodness. Look at all the folks over on YouTube. Mohammed Bradfield is here from South Africa. Arshia, good to see you. Shy Sharp over on Twitch. The Bearded Fen. Hello. Ivan, I'm not even going to get into last names. Ancient Coder. Chris Jones. Coated Beard. Nuwasa Sire. I hope I pronounced that, from Uganda. Charles is here. Jens. Hello. Is that Jans? Let me know. Thin Doll is here. No, please, help answer questions in the chat room. Always welcome to help answer questions in the chat room. Jason Bach is here. Aga, Aramahef, hello. Ivan, good morning. Ahmed, hello. Gareth, Carlos, Andreas, Kurt, good afternoon to you in Belgium. Andreas in Zurich. Hidayat, is that how you pronounce that? Ahmed from Egypt, hello. Mr. Joe B, how's it going there? Just got back from your stay-at-home holiday. I'm sorry. I've been doing a lot of stay-at-home holidays recently, and it's not fun. Ivan's from Peru. Mark is here from Russia. Hello. Yvonne Franklin from 876. 876. Where's 876? Abhishek, good evening to you. Mr. Fings. Is it Mr. Fings? From New Jersey. Jersey! Oh my goodness, my neck of the woods. Hello. It's pronounced Jens. Got it. I will remember that. South Africa is where DeWald is dialing in from. For taking care of you, Ghazal, is it Ghazali? Is that how you pronounce that? So good to see you. Take good care of our friend Arshia there, who's battling back from COVID. Hope you're doing well. Andrea from St. Louis. Sambhav, is it Sambhav from India? I'm not very good at the pronunciation. My apologies. Vangvathana from Cambodia. Oh my goodness. Kareem from Iran. Aziz from Barcelona. Yes, indeed. Let's rock. We're going to get through saying hello to everybody here. Prothagy, you're from the deepest of your heart. Oh, that's wonderful. Wake me when you get to the meat and potatoes. All right. No problem. We'll be sure to wake you. Absolutely. Yawning. I see how this is here. Did I miss BG Magar from Nepal? And Windox from Australia. Oh my goodness. Farhad from Azerbaijan. All right. Whew, a lot of folks here today. How's it going there, friends? My name is Jeff Fritz. We're going to be talking about, once again, back in on talking about getting folks started with C# for beginners. This is a very beginner-friendly stream. This is a stream. This is not a presentation. This is not an authoritative video like you might find on Microsoft Learn, Pluralsight, Wintellect Now, any of those sources, LinkedIn Learning. This is a discussion. This is very much intended to be answering your questions. And let's, as a group, there's more than a couple hundred of us here between several chat rooms. Let's talk. Let's encourage each other. Answer questions to help folks, and I'll be here to answer questions as well and talk through the material that we're going to review today to get folks, hopefully, maybe some folks who haven't worked with C# before, get them up to speed, get them interested, and hopefully get you inspired to try and do more with C# as today we learn more about methods and events, how we build methods, how we build and work with events inside of our C# classes. All the source code for these sessions is available online on my GitHub, github.com/csharpfritz/C# with CSharpFritz. I should post that link in the chat rooms. Let me just grab it here real quick. If you're watching on YouTube, it is in the description area just below. I make sure that it's always posted there. There we go. Shared out to both chat rooms so that folks can see and dive in there if they want to go see it. So lots that we can do today, but we are going to be focused in the notebooks folder over there, talking about I believe this is notebook 3 is the one that we're going into. 0103, talking about methods and events. You can run these samples. These are interactive notebooks that you can run online. You can click right from the beginning of that GitHub repository. You can click the Open with Binder link. It'll open it on a service called Binder, and you can jump right in to notebook 0103 about methods and events, and it'll open and it'll be interactive, running C# in your browser. And it's not really in your browser. It sends it back to the server. The server recompiles it and sends it back to you. But you're running it in your browser, so whether you're on a Mac, a PC, you're on a tablet, you're on a Chromebook, whatever it might be, you can be successful trying out C# today and developing with C# later. So we're just getting into my first cup of coffee here this morning. Made a little Starbucks blend, and I'm feeling pretty good about that. I'm feeling all right. Let me get some music playing in the background here. Of course, I like to play music in the background as we're writing some code together. This is the Lo-Fi playlist from streambeats.com. That's music that's DMCA-free, royalty-free. You can listen to it wherever it is you might be broadcasting, you might be streaming. Check it out. There's playlists for Apple Music, Amazon Music, Spotify, and you can even download the music if you want to listen to it wherever you might be going. Check it out, streambeats.com. Thank you so much for letting us listen to your music today. It is pretty awesome. It's nice that they share this and make this available. And I like having just a little bit of music underneath when we're talking here, because I think it sets a nice little tone. So when we pause, it kind of fills in. It's like, all right, not bad. We can deal with this. Andrea drinking the Panera Bread coffee. They make some good coffee too. Not gonna lie, Panera Bread does make some good coffee. Absolutely. How you doing there, Anil? You're gonna check out Binder? Fantastic. Yeah. Mark likes my cap. Yeah. So there are C# logos like this one available on GitHub. GitHub.com/.net/ or GitHub.com/.net-swag, I believe is where it's at. All of those are logos. Let me make sure. Or I could be completely wrong. No, it was a different URL. Sharing that out. You can find logos like this one over there that are free for you to make your own merchandise. If you like it, please don't sell it, but you want to give away stickers, you want to give away stuff to support various .NET Foundation projects, you can download them there. I have a bunch made onto hats, and I give away C# stickers, and I give away hats and stickers on my stream. You have a question about PowerShell scripts in C#. PowerShell's outside of my expertise. Not gonna lie. You want the music just a little bit louder? We can do that. I can push that just a smidge louder. I'm trying to balance it between the broadcast and what I hear in my headphones. So, you're welcome to ask your question, Kareem. Maybe somebody in chat can help out. But PowerShell scripts in C# are a little outside. Yeah, just a little bit outside my my comfort zone. Johnny B. Cat, can you use a coffee or Java variable to honor the drink? I see what you did there. The content's already built. Maybe we do something a little bit more interesting there. Alex is having an Italian espresso. What's my streaming setup? Asks Gareth. So I have 2 machines here. Actually, 3 machines that I'm streaming with today. So my primary machine that I'm broadcasting with, this is an AMD 5900X with 64 gig of RAM. I have a GeForce 3700 card on board there with an AverMedia internal capture card capturing 2 cameras. I have 3 cameras altogether on the set. We're probably not going to go to camera 2 here. But camera 3 you're going to see is at my second set there behind me, where we'll be on the full set with the full green screen. My second machine over here is it's an older Dell that I use to monitor chat, play the music, play some sound effects. I don't typically play sound effects on this stream. Third machine that I'm using is a laptop that's back there on that high top, where I'm going to be doing my demos and things today. I'm capturing the video coming off of that with a Magewell USB external capture card, and that's being fed back into the first machine. So there is a ton of configuration. Oh, and screen 4 is up top. That's my confidence monitor. That is a 50-inch widescreen display that I mounted up there that has camera on one side and it has chat on the other, so that when I am on the green screen scene, you see me look up. I'm checking where I'm pointing on camera, and I can also read chat. I'm not streaming on my Twitch channel. I'm streaming on the Visual Studio channel. We are over on Visual Studio today, not on the CSharpFritz channel. You know what? I should even route that hosting. Let me route that hosting real quick over there, just to make it a little bit friendlier. There we go. Greetings to you in Cyprus. Is that Ozgul? Is that how you pronounce that? So there's a lot going on. I had a request to put together a little YouTube video taking a tour of the home studio here. There's definitely stuff that I can put together. Plans for payment integrations? No, not at all. Will I do an event sourcing tutorial in the future? Asks Kurt over on YouTube. We did do a session on architecture the first time through. Let me see how we are timing-wise, schedule-wise as we go through the content here. This is we've got about 7 more weeks of content here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This is going to put us in right up against .NET Conf. Right into November. We'll see. We'll see if that works out. Because the next topic that I want to get into in November, I want to get into .NET MAUI after this. I want that to be our next... Our topic for November, December. So we'll see how it lines up. Ayesha, greetings to you in Mumbai. And is that SNT Wandi? Is that Saint Wandi? I'm not sure. From the Dominican, good to see you. Johan in Dubai. Checking for array boundaries versus not checking. Use try catch. Why? You can use a length parameter, length method there to see the length, the width of an array. So, Murat, greetings to you in Turkey. Yeah, John Peter. .NET MAUI, you're going to see a lot of from folks on the .NET team in November, December, rolling a little bit into January. So that's definitely topics that you're going to see us talking about and covering. So, Babar in Pakistan. Hello. Welcome in. Yeah, try catch with array sizes. The array will report to you. Arrays will report to you how large they are. Hello to you in Mexico. That is a very long name. Cascara Bias? But your name is Danny. Okay. Welcome in. Sarvesh from India. Hello. Welcome. Let me get ready. Let me head over to the other machine. Let's get things. I've wanted to switch to a wireless headset for this, but I feel like it isn't going to quite work out and give me the responsiveness to it as well as I get from my wired headsets. Will I be covering subscribing to events without leaks? I hope so. We'll be looking at that. So let me switch to the other headset there. I think that audio's okay. Test. Yeah, we're good there. All right. I'm going to head over to the other set, and we're going to get into our content today. You know what? I still don't have the keyboard set up so that I can interact with chat from over there yet. I do have a wireless keyboard for over there. Yeah, well, they're two different microphones, right? This is a dynamic microphone. This is a compression microphone. So, Cancit, is that how you pronounce that? From Spain, welcome in. Let me head over to the other scene. Let me grab my coffee here, and we'll head over and take a look and get things started. I'm going right over there. And the long walk across the home studio to the other scene. Hey, there I am. All right. Make sure I have my microphone wire. You have a question about running PowerShell scripts in C#. Yeah, oh, that was from earlier. I haven't scrolled it down. There we go. Yeah, I gotta have my coffee here with me on the desk. So, here's our GitHub repository right here. Are you kidding? The Spotify is on top of me over here. I'm gonna need to scoot that down 1 second, because I don't want Spotify appearing over my face. That's just gonna be annoying. You know what I'm saying? Where is it? No, you know what we're gonna do? We're just gonna move it over to the other side. 1 second. How did I never realize that it was like right on top of my face? Yeah, we'll put it right there. So now it's on the left side. All right. So you'll see the Spotify pop up over here now. How you doing? Okay. It's going to be a good morning. It's a nice Monday morning here on the East Coast of the United States. Rizwan, hello to you in Pakistan. Mr. Gun says coders without coffee does not exist. True. Right? Folks that are in the software industry, you'll typically find it's either coffee or tea. And I'm finding that as folks have been in the industry longer, they switch to tea. Sorry, I'm old school. I drink coffee. So, hey, CSharp, you tried to click away. Sorry, you're stuck with us. John Peter says tea for them. Andrea says facts. Yeah, see that? See that? This is how this works. You prefer energy drinks? I was doing energy drinks for a while, but I backed off, and I'm back on coffee. A nice cup of Good Morning America for me here. So this is our GitHub repository, C# with CSharpFritz. And if you scroll down here, I mentioned that linked to launch in Binder. It's right there. Now, I do have some other links that I need to embed on here so that you can open the notebooks directly in Visual Studio Code. And that's where we're going to be working today, is inside Visual Studio Code, tinkering, trying out some of the features around methods. I've got some documentation in there. I've got some links for you. It's really a complete article that'll hopefully get you pointed in the right direction and working through some things. And if all of the content is provided for you, please feel free to go open it up, try it out, tinker with it, and ask questions as I'm discussing and moving along here. Anything that I can't answer, maybe some folks in chat can help out, but I should be able to answer most of the questions on topic as we go along here. You're taking a little bit of a break from coffee because of heartburn. Oh no. Yeah. Stopped caffeine. See, some folks, we have to stop with the caffeine. Bob Ross RTX is here. Hello. Welcome in. American coffee equals 10% espresso plus hot water. Well, that's like an Americano, isn't it? A lot of sugar. I'm not going to deny that one. So here we are. Let me show you. We are here in notebooks, and we are particularly working with this one, 0103, methods and events here today. And I haven't updated this one in some time. Hey, look, OneDrive isn't signed in. That's right, you're not. And we're not going to be looking there today. We are in this notebook. All of your notebooks will open and run great inside Visual Studio Code, just like this one right here. We're going to continue where we left off last time, making our own types. Methods, events, and delegates is where we're going today. And delegates are a thing that there's two schools of C# developers. There's a group of developers that love delegates and they use them as much as they can. And there's a group of folks that avoid it. I'm one of those folks that try to avoid it. I feel like it introduces a little bit of confusion into my code, and I try to avoid using delegates. But hopefully we get them cleared up, so maybe you get comfortable with how to use them, how to use events with delegates, and use them in your code, your applications, going forward. And I'm seeing that Restream isn't going to scroll chat for me automatically. Thanks so much. This is raw C#, not ASP. That's right. This is plain C#. So it is an important topic. That's right, Mr. Gunn. I agree. So felt a little clunky until we got the fat arrow syntax, says Thin Doll over on Twitch. Totally agree. Totally agree. So let's talk about this. We learned about how, in our last session, how to make classes with properties, constructors, and fields. We're going to continue adding features to our classes so that we can have our classes actually get active. We can act on them by executing methods and receive notifications about things happening in our classes. And that's what we call an event. So let's start off talking about methods. Folks are used to seeing methods. This is kind of a topic that folks can kind of attach to, because a method is a code block containing a series of statements that we want our program to execute. We'll expand on that definition just a little bit to state that a method can also return values to its caller. So you define some sort of action code block that does something, optionally returns a value. We typically think of methods as an action that our class performs or an acting on of the class. So, right, we had a class last time of student. So you might have student.enroll, right, or student.withdraw to have the student start at a new school or withdraw, stop attending that school. So, a method has a signature that defines how you can interact with it. The signature is followed immediately by curly braces that wrap the code to be executed in the method, takes the following format, and it's right here. So you have some sort of access modifier. Public, protected, internal, private. And you can have multiple instances of some of those. You're going to have some sort of return type. That return type, string, int, other classes, file, right? The name of our method, enroll, withdraw, and some collection of parameters. 0 to many parameters that you define for your methods. By default, a method with no modifiers is considered private. So nothing outside of the class is allowed to execute that method. Parameters are comma delimited and defined similar to our variables with their type and name of the parameter. So you have things like int, my first parameter. So let's start adding some simple methods to that student class. Let me zoom out here so we can see a little bit more of this. So I mentioned enroll. There you go. Public void enroll. And void, using void as the return type, simply says this method doesn't return any values. It's an action that's going to do something and isn't going to return a value or some notification of status, okay? And that's typically what we use for those return values, is return some sort of status about whether or not it was successful, or, hey, I processed this and here's the outcome of it. So, some other methods you might have, leave class early, right? Hey, you know what? This student needs to leave class early because they have a doctor's appointment, they have a dentist appointment. So we have a leave class early method. Calculate grade for class. So, right, this might be something that anybody can do. Say, hey, for this student, calculate their grade for arithmetic, right? For their history class, right? Whatever. Pass in the name of the class that they're taking. That's kind of confusing. The name of the lessons that they're taking, and calculate their grade. And because this is going to return a decimal, it must return a value. If it doesn't return a value, it's invalid. Course, that's another good one for it. And we can create some other grades here. So grade class with a string for name of class. So now I can actually create a student. So let's create a new student. And we're going to display S, calculate grade for class, quantum physics. It's quantum physics. So, and we're going to say get a new student grade and display student grade. And I didn't set anything up in the student grade, so it just is returned as null. Let me take a look at the chat room and get caught up here now that I'm done going through that first little bit. There's a question over here on Twitch from Eternal Dev Coder. Is there a difference between a method and a function? Method is a generic name. Method is the abstract name. Method is the general name for these action blocks that you create and you define in your classes. It may return a value, it may not. Folks typically use the term function to refer to a method that returns a value. Otherwise, they'll refer to it as an action. But you'll hear the term function used more frequently. But method is the term we should use to refer to those. Let me see here. Calculate grade using those constructs to measure student performance. Yes. Yeah, function is a kind of ambiguous term, procrastinator. And that's why we want to use the term method to refer to this. Function is really a term that you hear used with other programming languages, especially JavaScript, because it's a keyword in JavaScript, where we don't use a function keyword to define a method on a class like we have here. Okay, it's a method because it has that signature. It has a return type, whether it's decimal or void, taking one-to-many parameters, curly braces with some action code inside of here. There you go. There's the Spotify note popping up. So it's not popping up over my face here. All right. Yeah, does this method have a value that it returns? Exactly. Yep. 0 to many parameters. How you doing there, Banana11 Crazy over on Twitch? So good to see you. Now, see, folks on YouTube, right? They've got the creative names, the creative screen names over there on Twitch. On Twitch, I'm CSharpFritz, but on YouTube, you'll see me pop up as Jeffrey Fritz. It's like, how's that work? So, that's okay. Hey, good afternoon. How's it going there, Nitro Evil? All right. So, let me zoom back in here to some of the text that we're going to be talking about. So I mentioned some of those method access modifiers can be like this, right? Public, protected, private, internal. There it is. Protected internal. Something can be protected and internal. Our methods can also be marked static to indicate the method runs for all instances of the class. It actually runs on the type of the class and cannot access individual fields and properties of the class. We'll learn more about static and other modifiers like override, virtual, and abstract in the next session. So there's a whole discussion of all these different things. Let's just start with the basic concepts of what a method is, what an event is. And we'll get into some of those other ways that we interact with them next time. See, that's called leading. I'm leading you into the next session. You want to stick around. You want to tune in next week. We can overload our methods in C#. So not only can you define a method with a series of parameters and a name, but you can define that same method with the same, you can define another method, You can define a method with a set of parameters. You can define second and third and many other methods with the same name, different parameters, and different return types. This is called method overloading. It can be very valuable to provide those alternate interactions that folks might have with your classes. So, let's revisit the calculate grade for class method. Now, typically we would assume we're calculating the grade for a student for the current semester, the current year, right, for the current course load that they have. Well, what if we want to go back and recalculate, for a different time? Hey, what were your grades from science class last spring? How'd you do that time? So we could create another method with a similar signature, but instead we'll accept a year parameter to provide that additional content. So here's my two calculate grade for class methods. Now, I can actually go over to the other side. Let me go over to the other side. I don't typically go on this side, see? But because of where I've got the camera, yeah, it doesn't work. It doesn't work like that. I like it better over here. So I can scroll to the side, can't I? Nah, it won't let me scroll to the right. So I've got two methods, calculate grade for class. The first one takes just the name of the class and kind of assumes that we're calculating for this year, right? So we're going to pass in quantum physics or arithmetic, whatever your class is, and we're going to pass on and say, well, calculate it for this year. But maybe you want to calculate the grade for class and specify some other year. Hey, how'd you do in arithmetic last year, right? So we have this second signature here that has the year enrolled and goes and does whatever calculation code and returns some value. So in this way, folks that are using our student class here can interact and get the grade for the class in the way they need to. And notice how we're kind of stacking these, right? We're delegating from one signature to the next. There's nothing wrong with that. To effectively create a default value for the year enrolled over here, okay? So a lot of options for you to be creative with how you want to build your classes. Abhishek asks, is overloading possible for the same signature but not a different modifier? So Abhishek, it does need a different signature, and let me show you what I think you're asking about. I'm just going to take this calculate grade for class. So I have this same one here. If I change this and I say, well, make this one private, the compiler's already telling me here, student already contains a member called this with the same parameter set. The signature that we're concerned about is the collection of parameters, okay? Because that's how the compiler identifies that they're different instances, and how to decide which method to call. Now, I could, right, if I created that again, and instead, if I took, and yes, it's an int, right, if I can set up that signature where I have one parameter and I call it year enrolled, right? Move the mouse. There it is. Year enrolled, right? I've got two methods that have the same name, one parameter, but this one is a string, this one is an integer. Those are two different ones that you can work with, that the compiler does accept. Right, and let's just put something here, just to show. But, and it's the type that matters. So even if I change this to class schedule block, right? Because you have schedule blocks through the day. If I change this to class schedule block, doesn't matter. These are two methods that both have one integer parameter. It sees that as a duplicate, and it reports, sorry, I've already got one of those. You need to figure out what to do with this. So I will comment that out. All right. So I hope that clears up a little bit about overloading and what you can and cannot do. All right. The compiler will help you. It will tell you when you are doing something that isn't valid like that. It's not something to be intimidated by. The compiler, please think of it. I know there are folks who purposely avoid programming languages that have a compiler because they're intimidated by the compiler reporting errors. Think of the compiler as your friend that's telling you, hey, this isn't going to work. I don't know how to do this. It reports it with the keyword error. It's not being harsh. It's not being mean. But it's telling you, I don't know what to do with this. Okay? And let's face it, for the machine, for the computer to tell you that something doesn't work before you try to execute it, it's preventing you from doing something that is going to be a bug, that isn't going to work to start. Hey, good morning, Napalm684 over on Twitch. Signature matters for identification. That's right, Abhishek. Yep. So that's right, Gustavo making a very good point on YouTube. The compiler, the C# compiler, is called Roslyn. It's very friendly. It's been optimized by some really smart folks. It's completely open source. You can find all the source code to it out on GitHub. If you're ever interested in how the C# compiler works, the source code is available. Now, it might be written with some pretty advanced code, and it is written in C#. That's kind of weird, but the C# compiler is written in C#. But it's intended to be as friendly as possible. And please do not be intimidated by the compiler, okay? It wants to help you. It wants to help you write better code by telling you what is legal, what isn't legal, and also to warn you when some things might not work the way you expect, so you'll get warnings that are emitted. You don't have to abide by what the warnings tell you. Lord knows, if you tune into one of my streams over on the CSharpFritz channel, you'll see I ignore warnings all the time, but it's a good idea to go back and fix them. So, yeah, it's better to have the compiler telling you something is wrong and doesn't work than to have a customer call you and say, I tried to order a movie from your video service here, and I got 10 movies instead. That's a mistake. That's a problem there. So, hey there, Copperbeardy. Good to see you. Yeah, the compiler is your friend. Bribe it often, says Johnny B. Cat. Yes. Yes. So, if we continue, you'll see the couple of statements down here at the bottom, calculating grades for this year for the quantum physics in 2020 does not pass in an argument here, but we can recalculate it and pass in, we'll go get 2019 and display the grade for that year. And it's some funny code up there that isn't intended to actually do any work. The point is showing the sample of it does work two different ways when you pass in that. So, cool. That kind of makes sense, and I see from the interactions with chat that a couple folks had some questions about that. I think we've cleared that up. I'll pause for a little bit here. Johnny B. Cat says it's better to have the compiler tell you the issue than your quality assurance department or your friends that are testing your code. Yes. My goodness, the last thing you want is one of the folks that are testing your code to come over and tap you on the shoulder. Hey Fritz, this doesn't work quite right. Or to send you that email or open that trouble ticket that says, hey, this doesn't work quite well. Yeah. So we have all kinds of tricks that we can use to help limit and reduce the number of those scenarios. Kwaku Emma on Twitch asks, when should you use, I think saying strict versus class, I think you mean struct. I think that's a typo. Let me know. I think you meant struct. I'll pause for a second just because of the delay and latency to make sure. We'll talk about structs in another stream. Struct is a way for you to create another structured block of code to represent an object that is stored as a value type instead of a reference type. We learned about reference types last time. When should you use a struct? When you want to use structs when it's something that is loaded with value types. It's only value types inside of it. and honestly, I would only recommend folks use structs if you are very concerned about performance. Most C# developers can use classes for everything they're using, records as well for everything they're using and doing in their applications, and honestly be focused more on getting your code optimized and working properly. At the point that you're optimizing and the difference between a class and a struct is significant, your code is very, very highly optimized, and most folks don't get to that level. So something that I do advise folks when you're building a web application, a mobile application, desktop application, there are other ways to optimize your code where you will see more benefit than by converting something to a struct instead of a class. Yeah, all right, Kwaku, cool. We were on the same track there. Thank you for confirming that. Yeah, you were looking for struct. Awesome. All right. So let's continue on here. The magic of the params parameter. So, what if we don't know how many parameters our methods are going to take? It's just going to have some number of arguments that we're going to pass in, and we'll analyze and figure out what to do with this. I don't know. I'm just going to receive some collection of things that are passed into this, and we'll do something with it. There's this special catch-all params keyword that you can use in your methods to catch any collection of arguments that are passed into your methods. So we can update that calculate grade point average to instead, there we go, receive an array, a collection of classes, right? We define this as an array because it's a string with 2 square brackets. That says this is a collection of strings. It's an array of strings that we're going to receive. Okay, so for each, right, and we're going to see loops next time. This is a loop here. For each C in classes, so classes is this collection. So for each item that's in that class collection, we're going to display calculating for class. Okay. So I passed in a collection of various classes: algebra, history, computer science, art, English, German. You're watching a guy named Fritz. I got to be taking German. Gym, study hall, and go calculate. So it does that for loop across that collection, and it's calculating for all these classes. And I just hard-coded a value there, but it might actually be doing something, reaching into that student record system and performing the calculation and outputting that data. So, right, we've used now the params argument to receive this collection of different parameters that are being passed in. Some n number of parameters. I don't know how many, but bring them in, and it just provides that to me as a collection that I can inspect and work with. Yes, that's right, Gustavo. It stores values directly in the variable. Yep. We will be talking about collections probably next time. Wait. I have the schedule here. Out on about 2 weeks out, we'll be talking about collections and generics together. Half the screen is hidden. Now more of the screen is hidden. How do you like that? I'm trying here. I want to make sure that I can point and show, and because everything's over here on the left side of the screen, I'm trying to show as much as possible. What's a collection of arguments, like a bunch of numbers? That's right, Arshia, over on Twitch. A collection of arguments is a bunch, right? It's a group of numbers. It's a group of, right, things that you want to receive. In this case, right, I received this collection, this group of classes, this group of courses that I wanted to calculate the grade point average across to be able to report. And that collection, we'll talk more about collections in 2 weeks. You're welcome to skip ahead and look at that notebook if you'd like. But receiving, there it is right there. I wish I could scroll it over. It doesn't want to scroll over. This collection right here, and see, now I'm getting closer to the camera. This collection right here that it's receiving is what we're able to inspect all of those objects. We're saying for each one of those, go and do something. Okay. Let me continue looking at chat. Why use the param keyword? Why not only string? You could do that. I'm showing how to use the params keyword here. Can I make more parameters with other types in the same method? Asks Mystagun. Yes. Let me pause and take a look at that. So I could certainly put in here, next to my string classes, I could certainly also receive a year of study parameter. Let me put a carriage return there so you can see them. Right, so now I'm receiving 2 parameters in this, and now it's saying, look, the first one, it shouldn't be a string. It should actually be an integer. So, right, all right, well, I want to inspect for the 2020 classes here, algebra, blah, 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 blah. And now it knows how to do that. And it outputs that information. So you can certainly put additional parameters on there. What's important is that the params keyword here needs to be the last argument in your method. You can put any number of arguments you want in front of it, but that params keyword has to be the last one. Good question. Thank you so much for the question there, Mystagun on Twitch. So, hey, Curious Drive. Oh, I'm glad you enjoy the sessions. Thank you. Is it better, Luthfi on YouTube asks, is it better to use collections generic or using traditional arrays? I'm not going to go deep on answering this. I'll save that for the session where we're focused on collections in 2 weeks. But depends on what you want to do with it. If your group of values that you're trying to pass around, if you need to be able to modify the contents, add to it, remove items from it, it's going to be better to use a generic collection like a list or a dictionary than an array. When you change an array, it's kind of rough. There's a bunch of methods you have to use in order to allocate and deallocate and resize the array, where those types have it built in and they're optimized to deal with the memory usage a little bit better. So thank you for the question. We can get into that in about 2 weeks. We can dive in a little bit further and show you how there's differences between arrays, lists, hash sets, stacks, queues, all those different collection types that are available to us in .NET as C# developers. We can access and work with those features. Let me continue reading chat here. Aztec Consulting, good to see you. Instead of a meteorologist, I'm a codiologist. That's right, I'm a codologist, pointing out we've got, look at this, we've got a hurricane blowing in over here around this method, and it's going to create a bunch of havoc for the folks out on the 401, and the folks out on the Schuylkill Expressway are going to have a real hard time this morning with sun glare coming in. Dear Lord. I'm making references to California and Philadelphia traffic all at the same time. Let me see here. Oko Soto over on, I hope I pronounced that right. Please help me out there with that. On YouTube asks, when is it best to use params when list could also do the same thing? Well, when you pass in a list, you actually need to create that collection and pass it in. Params lets you add as many parameters as you'd like, versus a list is something that you actually need to make the list object and pass that in. Two different things. So Lexi23 on Twitch asks, what would happen if I passed the string without params? Great question. If I turn this from params right here, let's try this out. If we let me leave it there. Let's do this. I'm going to copy and paste and comment out this second instance, just so I still have it there so I can roll back, okay? So now I'm receiving a string collection, a string array of classes. Now when I go down here, it looks like it's going to work, but it doesn't. Why? Because you're not passing this argument collection in that it's going to go and evaluate and say, well, I know there's some number of these. So back to the question about list, now this needs to be a string array that you're passing in. And I'll go all the way to the end over here, finish wrapping it right there, and now it works. So the difference is, just like with the list statement question, I have to pass this in as a string array, not as here's all of my arguments that I'm passing in. I need to actually create that array and pass it in as a second argument, as opposed to the second through nth argument that's being passed in. So it does work. You can do that. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a question of style and flexibility. This is a feature that's available to you. You can use it if you'd like. You don't have to. You may want to pass in an argument that is, here's all of the rest of my parameters. Absolutely. That may suit your applications very well. But this is the feature that's available to you that you can use. You can choose to avoid. Yeah, Banana got it right there. Any collection that inherits from... I'm sorry, Gustavo. I've lost context on your question. Hey, Eggsy. Good to see you. The 404 Expressway. Yes, it's not found. Can I call another method that is I think you mean overloaded within the class? Yes. And I actually do that up here. Right, I'm calling from one method into the next. And you can call other methods within that class as well, right? So let me go down here. Let me put this back the way that it was. Right, so do that. And if I have another method in here, right, public void hello world, display hello world. Right, and maybe it does some other logic in there, but up here, right, I can certainly call hello world from inside this method, and when it executes, there it is. The calculating from the for loop, hello world, and then the final command that I had in there that said we'll display the output of that method. So you can absolutely do those things inside your classes, inside your methods. Taking a look back at chat, let me see if I can get caught up here. Is there a performance difference when you pass string and class? If you ran that millions of times within the same minute, right, you really put a lot of pressure on it, you would start to see a performance difference. Running it for a dozen times over 1 minute, no, you won't see a performance difference. Running it for on a web page, where, right, when a web application runs, each web page process is a single thread, and it gets disposed. It's a single execution, and it gets disposed when it's done. It gets cleaned up. You won't see pressure on that till you have millions of users. Maybe tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands. You won't see a difference, but both of those are reference types. Both of those, you are going to feel some pressure on it. There's more optimal ways to do that now. Params in Python is like star args. I believe it is. My Python is a little rusty. Where's the primary stream at? I'm on Visual Studio on Twitch. I'm syndicating over to YouTube on the .net channel, and we're also on Learn TV. We're equally on all three. So, is there a schedule for these C# session streams you'd like to follow up on the next one? Asks Real Zalian. Every Monday morning, 9 a.m. and over here in our GitHub repository is the collection of notebooks that we're going through. These are the topics we're going to be covering for the next 10 or 12 weeks, leading right up to .NET Conf in November. So, and as part of the planning team for .NET Conf, I can tell you we've got a lot planned for that week. It is going to be an amazing week for you as developers, for technologists that are excited about software development using .NET and Microsoft technologies. It's going to be an exciting week. I hope you tune in with us that week. I'm really looking forward to it. So, all right, let me see here. Kwaku asks, what are some performance issues when an array is passed to a function that iterates the array, then passes the array from the same function to another that also iterates it, nested calls? You won't see it will be passing pointers to that array. It won't be making copies of it. Typically it'll be pointers. There's ways to force it to make copies, but typically it'll pass a pointer. So it'll reuse that same reference, we call it in C#. It'll pass that same reference around. You may, like I said, refer to it as a pointer. But you shouldn't see too much of a memory performance on that. Of course, you're going to see a little bit of a hit on processor as you're iterating through that, hopefully, probably significant collection. No, this is not Season 3. This is 1. We are over here inside of Methods and Events is the notebook that we're working with. Yeah, performance for beginners. Don't think about performance. If you're a beginner, don't get wrapped up in performance right now. That will come. Think about and be concerned about just getting your functionality working. We will cover performance and tuning and some of those things in a later session, and anything can be tuned and made faster. Anything. Even the C# compiler, they're figuring out and discovering new ways to do things that makes it faster, that, quite frankly, some folks are impressed by. There's some really cool stuff happening there. My clock, for some reason, on this display is really, really small. Why is it so small? That's weird. Not gonna lie. Continuing on here. Is there any way to go to learn about scripting coding? Hi, how you doing? My name's Jeff. I'm teaching about coding. Go to .net online. You can find all of our online courses for .net from Microsoft. If you go to .net, it'll route you to .netmicrosoft.com. Click the Learn link right up here, and there's all kinds of courses, materials that you can find online, completely free for you to check out on this website. There's even a survey for you to follow out. Check out. There's LinkedIn Learning. There's a .NET 101 video series. You may have seen one that was released last week about Blazor that I'm featured in. And tons of learning material depending on what kind of project you want to build. We've got learning materials for all the different things here. So I would encourage you to check that out. Oh, and did you see that? Hang on, did you see that? Hey, .NET Live TV is active right now. Yeah, it's this show. That's this show. So there are plenty of other shows on .NET Live TV that you can check out. Folks from the product team talking about how they're evolving the various framework components, the various tools that you might be using. The Visual Studio team talking about the upcoming version of Visual Studio. Machine learning team talking about ML.net and how you can use that. Entity framework team talking about how you can interact with the database. Check out .net Learn TV. There is a ton happening there. So, scrolling here. You're very welcome, Johnny B. Cat, over on YouTube. Thank you for the kind words. Where do you find documentation related to a method, like the method display that I'm using? So first off, to be clear, the display method that I'm using here, this is an artifact. This is a feature of .NET Interactive Notebooks. So this is how you tell the notebook, and you can see it's a notebook because of the IPYNB. You'll also see a .dib extension for these notebooks. Hey, Spotify, go away. Shoot. Go. You're done. Thank you. You can clear off now. It's not going away. Welcome to Fun with Green Screens. I'm your host, CSharpFritz. We're not going to clear out of here. I guess it's going to be up for a little bit. If you want to find documentation on some of these methods, right? And these are methods that I've created. So it's not going to... you're not going to find them in the official .NET documentation. Of course, you can go to docs.microsoft.com to get the official .NET documentation. You can go in here, type into the search box. You can search for articles, training, code samples, and it will go find that for you. I like to use DuckDuckGo to search the docs site. It gives me a pretty good collection going across it very, very quickly, and I can do it all from the address bar. It's up to you how you search it, but docs.microsoft.com, and it's got translations into, it's like a dozen different languages available here. Dozens of languages, my bad, that you can choose to inspect and get the appropriate documentation you're looking for. You can also, well, let me see if I do this right. I'm not sure if it's going to give me the quick help here. You can also provide documentation for your methods. Let me put it on the Hello World here. By providing, nope, I don't have the plugin. By providing a // documentation bit just above your method. So I believe, I want to see if I can do this by hand. I'm not used to doing this by hand. Usually it just generates for me in Visual Studio. But you can provide this summary block, and I can say a method to say hello world. And now when I reference that method, I'll get that help information in my IntelliSense. Nope, it's not going to generate it for me in this. Nope. What it will do, or am I missing a space there? Yeah, it's not going to show it for me. In your classes, when you're working in Visual Studio Code, Visual Studio, Rider, other tools, other IDEs, development tools that use OmniSharp, which is a service that will configure your favorite text editor so it can edit .NET code. It'll give you a little tool tip as you're typing a method name and show you whatever this summary information is here to kind of help you execute and use those methods appropriately. So it's a way for us as developers to deliver to other developers kind of inline documentation as they're using the code editor. Let me see here. Hello to you, Method Man Redmond fan in Serbia. Hello. It did show it. Did it? I don't think it... Oh, there it is. Ah, awesome. There you go. Thank you. My goodness. Thank you, friends, for calling it out. Here I went looking away from it. There it is. So as you type the method, it'll give that little bit of information. So that's your opportunity, like I said, as a developer, to hand off to the next person. Here's a little bit of information about that method you're calling. And you can also provide information about arguments in there. There's a specific syntax for that. I forget what it is off the top of my head. There's documentation about it, and we can get into talking about that on another stream. You all saw it, and I didn't. Thank you for keeping me honest, chat room. See, this is why I sometimes refer to this as pair programming, because while I'm looking at the camera, I'm not looking at my screen, and I completely missed when the thing popped up there. My goodness. Thank you. Thank you so much, friends. All right. Let me move on past this. Other arguments may be made optional. So we can add arguments and say, well, you don't necessarily have to provide this. You can take the default setting by providing a default value with equals and some value after it to say, well, this is optional, the enrollment year, and if you don't provide one, we're going to by default think it's 2020. So now when we look at this method, calculate grade point average, I have an optional first argument, and I have this parameters collection of classes. So it's possible to pass in no arguments. So here I have calculate grade point average. Let me put a carriage return there so you can see. And receiving enrollment year, and I set it to 0 by default. Okay. So calculating all for whatever year. So now I can execute it and just pass in, well, I can say my classes equals, and here's that collection. And actually, I don't need to pass because it's a params. I should be able to pass this just like that. No, it's not. I was right the other way. Because the first argument is optional, if I don't want to include it, I now need to kind of specify, well, here's the argument that I do want to assign it to. And I'm now forced into calling it an array. If I had provided that first argument of the year, right? So if I had said 2020, I could do that. Okay? So what we're seeing and learning here is this concept right here of named parameters. So you can specify, I want to assign a value to this parameter by specifying its name, colon, and then the value you want to assign. So all three of these now work. Okay. That's interesting. That's something now that gives us now even more flexibility in controlling how and what we interact with. So, let me specify 2019 for the first one so you see the difference. There you go. All right. So I specified it, so I got the 2019. I didn't specify it, so I got the 2020. And calculating GPA for all classes in the year 2021, and it goes through. So, same method, overloaded, different parameter structures that we can work with. Let me take a look back here at chat. Do I prefer a default value rather than the int question mark for the year? So I do prefer a default parameter, because if you were to provide like this and say that this is a nullable type, that's what this does. It says we'll also accept null in here, not just a short. When you do that, then at some point you need to do a null check in your code to say, right? If enrollment year equals null, or actually we can do, right? Come on. If it does not have value, enrollment year equals 2020. Then I have to add this in order to make it safe from receiving a null value and doing something with it. I don't want to process null. I want to, if null comes in, I need to go do that. Do something to handle it. Or I need to raise an exception. If I make this not nullable, right? It's a value type. You need to specify a value for a short. This is a number. So I'm avoiding any concept, any problems with interacting with null values by not allowing nulls to be sent in and specifying a default value there. So there's a whole school of thought on never allowing nulls in your application. And as of .NET 5, no, .NET 6, we're going to see the entire base class library, all of the classes that are available to you as a .NET developer from the default framework that is shipped to you with .NET. All of those classes handle nulls properly. There is, or even block nulls from being passed into arguments, into methods as arguments. That's what I meant to say. So avoiding nulls is one way to reduce the number of unintentional errors you're going to get in your code. So, and there's a whole discussion around that. Ugly Kid Johnny asks, do I work for Microsoft? Yes. Is that the right answer? I do. I work on the .NET team, helping with learning materials, planning events, helping developers be successful with C#, Blazor, .NET, Visual Studio Code. Absolutely. So, all right, moving on. So out and ref. So we've talked about passing parameters in. What if we want to receive some values coming out? We're going to take a look next at the out and ref keywords. So out, we use the out decorator for a parameter to specify a parameter that's going to be set and returned to the calling method. Ref indicates that a parameter is going to be passed by reference, and we're going to change it inside of our method, and outside of our method, it's going to be updated appropriately. So let's take a look at this. Let me put some carriage returns here. First, we've got an enroll method that's going to return out a student ID. So, hey, enroll the student, and when we enroll the student, we're going to set, here's your new student ID. We're going to issue you, here's your identifier for the school year. Here's your new enrollment. Some enrollment code executes here, and we're going to return, here's your student ID. It's an out parameter here. We're passing it out of this method. So student ID is going to be set here and returned. Now, if we don't set the student ID, we get an error raised for us that says the out parameter must be assigned before control leaves the current method. That's important. You can't have an out parameter that is not assigned inside your method, okay? So I will turn that back around there. All right. Now, I also have a method here, do something. My watch and phone are going off. There was just some news from the FDA approving vaccines. So I can also have a method here that passes, go do something. I don't know what you're going to do, but do something and pass in some value. It's an integer, and we're going to pass this by reference. Now, value types, integers, numbers, Boolean values, characters, those are passed by value. The value of those types is passed into our methods. You can change and interact with them, and nothing happens to them. But when you pass it by reference, now this is going to be modified. So inside of do something, my value is my value. And I can also have, hey, delete items from my shopping cart. I can do something like this with a number of items and say number of items equals 0, and it will update that outside. So let's start. I'm going to comment out the second sample here. So I will execute this. So enroll year out an ID. So I need to declare an ID that I'm going to receive, an ID variable that I'm going to pass that output value into. So my enroll method here, rats. My enroll method here needs to have that same out keyword with the variable name that we're going to write that parameter into. I'm not passing a value in, right? With input parameters like we saw earlier, like the year that I'm passing, I need to pass a variable here that we're going to write to. So we're going to write into the ID, into this variable, the output of that, and we display it in these two lines. So there's my student ID. It's been written into the ID variable, and there's the year that was returned. No, the year that was passed in as well. Okay. So that's an output. Now if I do that reference, right, passing things by reference here. So I've got my var is 2020. Now do something on my var. So my var do something is going to take in that value, add 1 to it here. It's going to increment it, and then output a, inside of this, here's the value of it. If I execute that, so inside of do something, my value is 2021, and outside of it, it is also 2021 because it was passed by reference. If I take that ref away, all right, execute the exact same code again. It's not going to work because I have the ref keyword there. Take that off. Inside of do something, it's 2021, but outside it's 2020. We did not modify the value outside of it because it was passed by value. It only changes to a reference when we use that ref keyword. So I will change that back. Ref and ref. Okay. Now, other reference types that you pass in and modify, like strings. Strings are a reference type. If you modify it, it does modify outside the class in that same way. So, right, I'll create another method here, and I'll call this hello. And if we pass a string, my name, and if I say my name equals, well, let's make it clearer. Something Jones. We're just going to add that on there, right? And I'm going to say display hello, my name. Okay. So if I do the same thing down here, var my name equals Jeff, and if I say s dot hello my name, right? Yeah, and display my name. I made a mistake. It did not update it. I thought it would update it. I'm thinking about that wrong. aren't I? Yeah, now it does it. I stand corrected. Here, I thought I was going to show something different. I didn't. All right. Already covered that it needs to be set. Yes, already covered that. Types defined by a class keyword are always passed by reference. Yeah. So here we have a student with calculate grade. And what's it what the heck is it showing there? Yeah, okay. I know what I got here. So we have a new grade that we're creating. Name of class physics. So we're saying display the student, so we get no, we're not. Display the grade, which is physics 0.7. We're saying calculate grade up here, which is saying, no, the final score, we're going to change it to a 90%. And then we display that, and it updated the internals of the class. String, it doesn't work. It's a class that will get that interaction. Let me pause and take a look at chat here. Romfos asks, how big is the .NET team? I don't have an exact number, but it's more than 100. You like my hat? Thank you, ugly kid, Johnny. Most of the time we use int when is short and other number types appropriate. Honestly, when you're concerned about memory size, good example. I'm storing, for a website that I'm working on called ClipTalk, I'm storing millions of records about Twitch clips in a database. I'm storing integers for the number of views of those clips. That might be good for some of those clips to get up around a couple 100,000 views, but for most of the clips that have less than 10 views, it's a waste of space. So we need to be judicious about how we use that. When you get to storing 4 million, 5 million records, and you're looking at the difference between storing 32 bytes versus 16 bytes, that's a lot of space that you're using. That's a lot of space that you're using. So, let's say you have a function that returns an integer, you do some logic checking, and you don't want to return anything because logic has failed. You would return a null pointer and check for that. We would throw an exception. Yeah, thank you, Banana. Why return the student ID as an integer as an out parameter? Why not return the student ID instead of the bool? Back in this previous example up here, I'm returning the Boolean here because you successfully enrolled. I need to give you some success indicator if there's a possibility of failure. The course is full. We don't have room for more students. So I may need to give you a success indicator to indicate, yes, you are safely enrolled in that course. Ah, we could use a tuple. You're right. Ronald Walcott. You can do that. I don't think we talked about tuples. Yes, we did talk about tuples. You could use a value tuple as well. Yes, absolutely. So, why don't we return a class containing student aid and bool result? Sure. Sure. You can do that as well. And these are all design decisions, and this is where code, software that we're writing, the engineering lessons that we know about how this works get mixed with the art form, and it becomes software development. A lot of software development is art in how you decide to mix these various capabilities that you have in your programming language. It's up to you how you use these features together to reach your desired result. You may want to return these in one way, as a value tuple. You may want to create an output class Sure, that makes sense as well to return. All kinds of different ways that you can go about this. You can declare the ID in line. Yes, you can. Right, when I was declaring the student ID here, I can, with the new versions of C#, you can declare that value coming out in line like this as well, and that will work. You don't have to necessarily declare it ahead of time. You can declare it on the way out. Thank you so much, Jace Morn over on Twitch. That is an option for you. So, let's do this. I wanna keep that. You can declare the output variable inline by declaring its type like this. Cool. All right. Scott Allen taught you that parameters are always passed by value. Yes. If it's an object, you can change the value of its properties. But yeah, I made a mistake there. And Scott Allen was a fantastic teacher. We really miss him. Will the compiler allow a code path which does not lead to assignment if parameter specified is out? No, it will not. I did show some of the troubles with tuples. That sounds like the name of a Star Trek episode. Continuing here. Lots of software development is art. You are correct, Curious Drive. And magic. Yes. Will it work with integers, and what would work with integers? Lemur dev. What is ref? I just covered that. You can rewind the video for a minute here. It's a keyword that specifies by reference, passing values by reference. Let's talk about delegates next. I've got less than a half an hour to go here, and about a third of the content to go through. All right. Delegates. Now that we know what methods are, how to interact with them, what if we want to pass pointers to those methods? We want to pass around a reference to the method so that we can say, hey, when this is done over here, execute this next, right? Or I think this is the method that I want to execute, and execute it somewhere later in my code, or change the assignment of, well, what's the next method in the chain of processing we want to go and execute. So there is official documentation for delegates. You can click through here. Sometimes you'll hear folks refer to delegates as callback functions. That's important to know. But you can declare a delegate. A delegate is just a signature for a method. So you declare a delegate using the delegate keyword here. So delegate, some return type, the name of our delegate, and you'll typically see them named with something handler. At least that's a technique that I use. And your list of input parameters. So what if we build a little bit of a calculator here, and we say, we're going to go and calculate something, passing in 2 arguments, and we're going to pass in our handler here, our calculate handler, that also knows what these 2 arguments are. So from this calculate method, I have output. I'm going to execute this handler. It's a pointer to a method. So this handler that was passed in, called handler, I'm going to execute it. And I can use the exact same signature to execute that delegate as if it was a method on this class that I can access. So handler, and pass in my 2 arguments. So I've defined in this class 2 other methods that have that same signature, add and subtract. And it's basic calculator types of methods. So I'll create a new student, and I'm going to instantiate a delegate to be used with the new keyword. And it wraps the name of the method to be assigned, okay? So here I'm saying my calculation handler is a new calculate handler, and I pass in, well, I'm going to execute subtract. So calculate 10.5 and that handler, and it's subtracting. I can change this from subtract over here. I'll change that to, I've got my caps lock on. I'll change that to add. There it is. And now it adds. Okay. So I'm changing the behavior of the calculate method by passing in a handler, a delegate that says, do this. Here's some extra method information for you. Not just input parameters, but I'm passing some code for you to execute somewhere at your discretion. I don't know when you're going to execute it, but you want to know some additional information about when and how to execute more code. Okay, here's that extra bit of information. Let me scroll through and take a look here. Yeah, I don't want to get into some of the newer stuff because it can get confusing. Can I pass a lambda as a delegate into a function? Yes. And we're going to get into lambdas a little bit later on. I wanted to get into the basics of what a delegate is. There are also actions in action in func lambda, right? That's a partial. It's a method that's declared like a variable. We'll see more about that later, but you can pass those in as well. C# automatically dereferences the reference for you. Yes. You kind of think of delegates as a nicer version of C-style pointers. Yes, I agree, Darren. Why declare it and pass around a delegate and not just call a function directly? I'll show you. Spoiler alert from Surly Dev. So we can also specify anonymous methods to pass around. So perhaps we have that same student object. We can pass in this, right? Here's a lambda, right? This is a partial definition. This is we call it an anonymous method because we've defined here are the two arguments, foo and bar, and we know the signature of them because it's a calculate handler. It's 2 ints. So, and we specify fat arrow, right, such that foo times bar, and we've called that multiply. So I can do that same calculate method because this is another instance of that delegate. Now it will multiply, and we get 50. Okay. I hope this is making a little bit of sense as to how you can pass around and you can change the behavior of methods. Now, where delegates get to be important, don't I need a parenthesis on student on line 32? I don't know where you're referencing, Henry. You see passing 3 items in the method call, but I see there are 2 in the method. So the delegate signature here has 2 arguments, okay? The calculate method, let me put some carriage returns in there. Scrolling. Has 3 arguments. The 2 arguments that we're going to pass into are delegate. So when I execute calculate, here I pass the two numbers and the pointer, the delegate that I want to actually execute. Okay, so I do the same thing in here. I've got a new instance of that delegate, foo bar such that foo times bar, And I'm passing 3 arguments here. All right. So why have an anonymous method? What's wrong with declaring a method or function somewhere? Absolutely. You can do that without question. But if I'm only doing it right here, I'll just do it right here. I agree with you. It makes sense to create fully defined method names for things and not use anonymous methods like this. I agree. That becomes much more easily unit testable. We'll talk about unit tests in a later session. But when it's like this, well, how do I reach in and test just this block of code? A little bit trickier to do. You're confused as to what exactly .NET Framework and .NET Core is for. Do I mind explaining? I'll give you the 30-second rundown. .NET Framework is the name that we gave to the runtime tools and languages that were initially developed for .NET developers back in 2001 and released in 2002. It's 19 years old, runs only on Windows, and the primary way to develop with it is in Visual Studio. If you wanted to build code with it, the only way you got to the compiler was through Visual Studio. In the time since then, starting in about 2014, 2015, Microsoft decided we want to make this more accessible to folks everywhere. And another fella out there named Miguel de Icaza wanted to make it easier for folks to access. And Miguel went and wrote the open source version, initial open source version, back in about 2008 of .NET called Mono. And that Mono runs a whole bunch of other locations. Linux, Mac, iOS, Android became the Xamarin framework. .NET Core is the new version of .NET that was written by Microsoft starting in about 2014, 2015 that runs on Windows, Mac, and Linux. Was originally designed to be very cloud capable. A better optimized version of .NET for the cloud that was completely open source. Anybody could use, anybody could tap into it. And it was intended to be an evolution of .NET Framework. In the time since, .NET Core has evolved to not just be a web development framework, but also console app development framework, services development framework, with tools for gRPC, OpenAPI, Blazor, so you can build with WebAssembly in the browser. And now it also includes frameworks for you to be able to build for Windows Forms and WPF in Windows. And that merger that now includes those Windows tools, we call .NET 5. And we've dropped the core part of the name. The next version of .NET, .NET 6, that will be released on November 8th, 9th, 7th. Second week of November, first day of .NET Conf. That's what it is. The next version of .NET, .NET 6, includes all of those Xamarin features for you to be able to build for Mac, iOS, and Android, and build native apps for those environments. That is now included in .NET 6 as what we now call .NET MAUI, .NET Multi-Platform Application User Interface. We're very much looking forward to that. I'm going to have a bunch to tell you about that as we get closer to that week. Trust me when I tell you that our conference schedule for November, that week of .NET Conf, is going to be so exciting, with lots of new samples, lots of new code, lots of new capabilities that are going to be available to you. And it's all open source. If you're interested, you can go check out the preview releases and the source code right now. But that's the difference between .NET Framework and .NET Core, and kind of the story, how we got there. Is the behavior of delegates like interfaces? No. Delegate is a pointer to a method. Interface is a contract for a class and a signature. We'll talk about interfaces. I think it's about week 8. We'll talk about interfaces and error handling. We're gonna get into benefits here of delegate in just a little bit. .NETconf.net is where you can, which sounds weird. .NETconf.net. There we go. November 9 to 11, right there. All right. So that's all online. It's always been online. It's our 11th year of .NET Conf. It's going to be a lot of fun. let me see here. There's implicit conversion. I'm going to skip through that because I'm running out of time here. I've got about 15 minutes to go. Multicast delegate. Defined delegate types can be multicast, allowing them to point to multiple methods to be called. That sounds a little weird, but to have one type that can point to multiple methods, that's interesting, because now when I execute that delegate, instead of it just saying we'll add these together, now it'll chain them and execute multiples. So I can do something like this. If my calculation is a new calculate handler and I pass in subtract, and then if I do this plus equals, right? We've seen plus equals, right? Increments and sets the value to that variable. Same thing here. We're incrementing by adding another calculate handler, this one with add, and assigning the combination of the two back into calculation. And I'm even going to add another one here, plus equals, and I'm going to make this the multiplication handler. I've just created it here on the fly as an anonymous method, and I can remove from that collection with a minus equals a specific signature. Remove the subtract handler. And then I can say, well, go calculate that. With one method call, it's going to do both executions. So we passed in 10 and 5. Add, subtract, and multiply were in there. We removed subtract, so it executed added and then multiplied it. It added 10 and 5 and got 15. Multiplied 10 and 5 and got 50. All right? So it's doing this combination of interacting with these values and returning them. So we can execute and do more with that. Will .NET MAUI have a proper designer like WPF? We'll see. They're working hard to make all of those features available. How can one contribute to .NET? What can be contributed? Documentation, source code, everything can be contributed. Check it out at github.com/dotnet. Is there any activity in Visual Studio 2019 preview? Or has it all moved to 2022 now that 2019 has released? The last version of 2019 with new features is currently in preview. When that is done, the only releases you'll see of Visual Studio 2019 will be patches to fix things, maintenance issues. You will not see new versions added to Visual Studio 2019. How do you unsubscribe to handlers to avoid leaks? This minus equal signature right here. We'll unsubscribe from that to remove, to prevent any kind of leaking of that. Because everything is all here in the same area, it's cleaning it up nicely. It's when you have them coming in from multiple classes that are being held in memory at different levels that you'll start to see some leaking, memory leaking. Okay. Delegates can be combined. There's a difference in executing a collection of delegates. You can do a for each across that collection of handlers. Like that. Here we go. Events is where the delegates really hit the road running, and this is where you need those pointers. An event allows us to notify that something happened inside code. In order for us to have a pointer to, hey, this is the method to call when something happened, that's a delegate, right? So an event, something happened in my code, notify somewhere else that this thing happened. That pointer to something else, that is a delegate. So when you have an event, you need to pass along that pointer to the method that you want to notify. The return type from an event is a delegate of type event handler that defines two arguments. So typically you'll see it returning event args. Inheriting from event args is the base class here. So we have an enrolled event args that has a year enrolled property. So I've defined a delegate enrolled event handler that has a pointer to the sender. Who's sending this? So I can reach back and inspect and interact with it. Or, let me put some carriage returns there. Not or, but a sender, and the second is a arguments collection here, an arguments class that we're going to fill out and be able to inspect. This is the typical standard way that you see .NET folks work with events. You can create other signatures for your event handlers that have whatever you'd like in them. By convention, this is how .NET folks reference events, okay? So I've declared an event, enrolled event handler enrolled. So when the enroll method is called, I'm able to say, okay, we did some long-running process here. Notify. Call the enrolled event and pass into it. All right, this is the object that's sending, that's raising this event. I'm notifying you that enrollment has completed, and we're going to pass in these enrolled args. Let's put this on a new line, right? And you're enrolled for 2020. Let's change that to 2021. Okay. So now, put that on the second line. So now, if I create a student and I say, here I am wiring up the event with this delegate. So the event enrolled plus equals, right? I'm defining an anonymous method here. Sender and args, those are the two arguments of that delegate. Display, right? So here, this is what I want it to do. Display, I'm now enrolled for the year, args.year enrolled. And I will call the enroll method. I'm now enrolled for the year 2021. Now, if I didn't raise that event, right? If that didn't happen, it just executes and nothing's returned, okay? So the event here is really good to have in place because some long-running process is happening. I'm going to tell you later when you're done enrolling, right? I know when I went to school, when I went to university at Pennsylvania State University, the enrollment process took a long time. When I was getting classes scheduled and whatnot, you filled out your forms and all that stuff. Here's the classes I want to take. You submitted them. And a couple days later, maybe even a week later, they'd come back and say, okay, here's what we got for your schedule there, Jeff. That event to notify me, here's your schedule. There's my enrollment completing. There is a generic event handler that you can use. And that event handler will receive a collection of whatever that argument type is. It needs to inherit from event args, and it becomes a little bit simpler to work with when you define this in your class. But I use the exact same signature being output from this. So I can still call enrolled, and it outputs just fine right there. Okay. I got to wrap up. I've only got 5 minutes left. There is a partial keyword that you'll see in use throughout .NET that you can put on classes to say this is only part of a class. So if I have a partial class called teacher here, right? See the partial keyword there? This is only one part of this. I'm storing this in one file. And if I place another partial class in a different file, at compile time, the .NET compiler will weld these two together. We'll take them and mash them together as one class that you're interacting with. So I have from teacher, I have name property up here. I have display age, but in the other half, I have a birth date field and a birth date property and a get age method over here. Now, I can define the signature for the getAge method using a partial keyword here indicating this is going to get replaced in the other half of the class. And there's the partial to actually fill out. There's the method. So I can go through and I have one teacher class, name, there's my birth date, display the teacher, and display age. It interacts and it behaves as one class, even though it was defined in two separate classes. This is great for if you're going to write any kind of a code generator and you want to generate some code, but also define some other things about the class in another file. You see this in use. You see this practice with way back in the day with ASP.NET Web Forms in .NET Framework. You see this in use a little bit with WinForms. You see it in use with Blazor, the concept of partial classes and interacting with them. I'm going to come back to chat in just a minute. I want to make sure I get to the last topic here, enumerations. And this is a way for us to define our own collection of values that are valid for a type. So, right, we have a light switch. Well, a light switch can have these settings: off, 50%, bright, nuclear, and on. So I can now say, define a variable of type light switch. So my light switch in the hall, I'm going to set it to bright and display that hallway. And enumerations by default are an integer type. So I can actually cast it back to an integer, and you see the first value defined in my enumeration, off, is actually 0. You can define enumerations inside and outside of classes. I'll let you read through that. And we can also set up flags to define various bits that you may want to set and interact with. You can define them both as integers like this. So file access, we know the Unix file system access level permissions, read, write, execute, 1, 2, 4, and I can OR them together here and get one value that says the access when we put together read, write, and it says execute over here, is read, write, execute with commas in between it. Not only can you define it with those integers, but you can also use binary values here. So 0b says this is a binary value, and here are the bits to the right. Of course, with .NET numeric values, you can use an underscore to separate the elements of your numbers. So 0 through 64 as the binary values, and I've even defined weekend as another value inside this enumeration that says Saturday or Sunday. And I can define work week as days of week Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and I'll even tab them over. And when I display the work week, I get those 5 days. So enumeration is a very powerful thing for you to use. We are just about out of time. Let me head over to the main desk. We're going to say goodbye to our friends from Learn TV. Thank you so much for tuning in, as they're going to cut over to some other content. Really appreciate you joining us. Let me get scooted back in here and all settled in. That's better. That's better. I'm over here now. And I'm back on this microphone. All right. Whew. We covered a lot of content today. Let me take a look at chat, see if there's anything I can catch up here. Why use partial versus an extension method? It's all about options. Partial, I think, works great when you have clear definitions of the signature of your method. Extension methods are also a little bit trickier to use with unit testing. A schedule of the series, take a look over in the GitHub repository, and you'll see the notebooks and exactly what topics are coming up right there. Why use internal? Internal lets you define methods, classes that cannot be used outside of that library. When we go and start sharing our libraries or our applications and we reference other things, internal items cannot be seen outside of the application. Is there a way to have an enum, like a custom property, the way they're strongly typed? I need a little bit more context to that, and we are out of time. Yes, Regathian. Partial is very useful when you're doing some machine-generated stuff. So, thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in today. We went right up to the line there. Oh, my goodness. We covered so much content. Thank you. Thank you again for tuning in. I'll be around out on Twitter if you have further questions. I'll be back tomorrow over on my channel on twitch.tv CSharpFritz. We're going to be talking about Blazor. We're going to be building some more content over there. And we're even going to start talking about using a little bit of RavenDB over on my channel. This video will be archived and available over on YouTube. Those of you that are on YouTube, thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a great rest of your day. You take care. And if you're watching right now over on Twitch, we need to set up for a raid. We need to get you connected with another streamer on the big Twitch TV network so we can share the love, see what else is going on out there. Taking a quick peek around the horn, who else we can connect with. And, oh my goodness. I don't see... Yes. Bug-proofing your Blazor. Oh my goodness. Bug-proofing your Blazor applications. That sounds fantastic. Our friends at Code It Live are starting now. Let's set up a raid. Let's get connected with them. Thank you so much for tuning in. This video will be archived over on YouTube. Check it out at youtube.com/dotnet and look for the C# with CSharpFritz playlist. All of my videos are available over there. All right, friends, get ready to say hi to the cool cats over on, cool cats over on Code It Live channel, and I will see you tomorrow. Take care.